Fellas, you have 4 days, just 4 days to lock down these red border weapons for Garden of Salvation. Now you may be wondering, Cross, why would I want any of these? I already have these weapons. Oh, no. These weapons are way beyond its previous versions. From a bow that contains kinetic tremors, to Prophet of Doom potentially being the best shotgun in PvP in the energy slot, Ancient Gospel having kill clip rampage. Fellas, the list goes on and on, from Sacred Providence to Reckless Oracle to Zealot's Reward to Omniscient Eye. All of these weapons are hands down worth the trouble of farming. Today, guys, we're going to be going over how to tackle Garden of Salvation, the loot rollout for each one of the encounters, the challenges associated with those encounters, which will enable you to get double drops, and we're also going to talk about a few cheeses, because that, of course, makes everything a hell of a lot easier. But just fair warning, you have 4 days to farm for these weapons, because this week, Garden of Salvation is the featured raid. Not saying you can't farm it next week or the week after, but again, you're going to have your set drops, and that's it. Only this week, until the next time Garden of Salvation is the featured raid again, can you farm encounters over and over to get continuous drops. So let's get started. Now, before you begin any of this, make sure you go over to Hawthorne, pick up our weekly quest for Garden of Salvation. This essentially locks you in a guaranteed red border once you've completed the raid. Now, as far as the loot layouts for the raid, Encounter 1 will give you Zealot's Reward and Accrued Redemption. Let me just say Encounter 1 is an incredibly easy farm, considering you can actually cheese this encounter. Encounter 2 will give you Prophet of Doom and Reckless Oracle. Not a bad one, but I will say the challenge is a little bit more annoying, but definitely worth it in my opinion, because you get 2 drops. Now, Encounter 3, arguably the easiest one to farm here. This is the Consecration Mine. It gives you Ancient Gospel and Sacred Providence. Farming red borders for these 2 weapons, guys, should be incredibly easy. Encounter 3 is by far the easiest encounter for both challenge and just doing it regularly, especially with the Rhine damage setup to get that one face. And then Encounter 4, the Sanctified Mine. This one is by far the most annoying. It will give you Omniscient Eye. Omniscient Eye is the sniper rifle. It's got some pretty good rolls, and we're going to touch on the rolls after we've talked about each of these encounters. Now, if you've never done this raid before, or it's just been a while for you, that's completely fine, man. For the most part, though, this is a pretty simple raid. But let's start with that first encounter, Evade. The goal is essentially to use this tether mechanic to open the doors, and you'll also need to manage this debuff the boss drops on the ground called Voltaic Overflow. And if you don't manage it, you'll wipe. Now, this debuff lasts for 2.5 minutes, and it doesn't really do anything. You just need to pick it up and then pick it up again. Unfortunately, though, you cannot pick up another one for 2.5 minutes. And this is where your teammates come into play, because that means you have to juggle picking up that debuff. Now, there is a cheese that makes this go a lot quicker, but we're going to go over how to do this normally. Essentially, you want to divide your fire team into 2 teams. One tethering to open the doors, the rest picking up the debuff from the boss. Now, you can do this in a couple of ways. Either 2 teams of 3, or what our fire team did was 2 people on the boss collecting the debuff and 4 people doing the tethering. Then every room, we would have 2 people switch off and be on boss duty, with the other 2 joining the tether team. Then the debuff team will start by staying in the first room, where you rally and you pick up the debuff. Meanwhile, the other 4 will move forward into the next room. They'll need to kill a Hydra called an Angelic in order to lower the shield surrounding the tether box, which the team can then tether onto in order to open the block door to progress forward. Now, when the tether team moves up to the next room, the boss will move up to the previous room they were just in. Now, in the next tether room, it's a little more open, with the tether box spawning in a couple different locations. So just look around for a moment, guys, and essentially do this mechanic all over. Now, after that, you'll move up this hill, and you'll need to now tether 2 different boxes in order to open the final door. The good thing is, after tethering the first box, the boss should teleport, allowing the rest of the team to move up, and they can actually assist with the tethering. Now, let me just say, this tethering aspect is going to be something consistent throughout this entire raid. Without a doubt, though, it is annoying. Just saying, it's one of the most annoying mechanics. It's not necessarily difficult, it's just annoying. Now, from this point on, after you've unlocked that last door, you'll be in this long field with various ads, champions, as well as a boss that's going to be dropping the debuff along the way. What you essentially need to be doing is picking up the boss's debuff and survive. Then you'll make it to the end, loot the chest, and there you go. Now, let's talk about that cheese. There's a cheese that makes this encounter way easier and way faster. I'm talking like 5 minutes, maybe even less than that, to complete. Shout out to D-Miners for finding this out. All you need, though, is Lost Signal or Velocity Baton. Now, just as before, you're going to have people babysitting the boss and picking up his debuff. And the other players will move up, find a cube, which is normally blocked off, but instead of defeating the Angelic, you can actually skip that. You could skip that entire mechanic. Instead, you could just straight up shoot the cube with Lost Signal, which will activate your tether, allowing you to unlock the door and progress forward. thus allowing you to skip steps. Now, something to keep in mind is that there are overloads that can hurt pretty bad. There's a lot of things shooting at you, and if you're sitting there tethered, you're in a sticky situation. So I actually ended up rocking things like Saint 14 with bubble, but literally just use anything that can help you survive. This is by far the easiest way to do this encounter, which takes us to the challenge of this encounter. This one is incredibly simple. All you need to do is not kill the Cyclops. Now, we believe that the Cyclops you don't need to kill are just the ones at the very end, the long section before the chest. So I believe the Cyclops leading up to this area are fair game, because we accidentally killed one and we still got the challenge. But if you run around with like an eager-edged sword, you got your lost signal, you're popping the cubes, you're tethering fast, and you perhaps got someone popping something to keep you alive, whether that be bubble, song of flame, or even just a tether to lock down enemies, you'll be scooting through this encounter very, very quickly. And if you don't kill any Cyclops at the end there, you get double drops. I think the only issue I ran into was that bubble seems to have some issue with the tether. So be very careful where you place your bubble and kind of space it away from things. But outside of that, guys, this is an absolutely free encounter, which will net you a fantastic fusion rifle being Zealot's reward and a kinetic bow, accrued redemption, which contains a number of great perk combinations. Now, between encounters 1 and 4, you're gonna have a bit of a jumping puzzle, but there is a secret chest here on the left. Essentially, go past this platform, jump down on the side, hop in, boom, you've got a chest. Keep in mind though, chests inside of Garden only drop armor. Now we move on to encounter number 2. This is the summon encounter. The goal of this encounter is to defend the 4 relay pillars around the area from Vex that are trying to sacrifice on it, as well as defeating Angelics. Now there's no boss here, so this is going to be all about ad clear. You're also going to need something to deal with barrier champions. You've got home plate, first base, second base, and third base. Those are the encounters you have to defend. Now to start the encounter, you just simply need to kill the ads here at the starting relay, which would then spawn in an Angelic, which when killed will now lower the shield covering the tether buff. Now there's going to be a tether box in front of each of these 4 relays, essentially at each base. And you use this box to tether with one of your teammates, which will grant you the Enlighten buff for 45 seconds. Now this buff is needed in order to break the shields of the Vex that will be approaching each one of these relays. So if you don't have the buff, you don't have a way to break the shields, thus meaning they will have the ability to sacrifice. Now typically, the play for this encounter is to have 1 player assigned to each of the 4 relay pillars. Then the other 2 players will be runners, and they will essentially just go back and forth from relays, helping with ad clear, as well as assisting the player to tether in order to get the inline buff. Now to make things easier, the runners don't actually have to run to each one of these locations. They have these Vex portals, which will activate upon linking the relays, making it easier to go between each one of these relays. And this is helpful because Angelics will continue to spawn in, and when they do, you have to kill them as it locks the cube, and so whoever the runners are can literally go back and forth and help gun those down. To be honest with you though, guys, if you got a good setup for any of this, just your basic ad clear setup, you'll be just fine. Like you could literally solo aside all by yourself. The goal is to continue doing this. Keep tethering, keep the inline buff going, keep the relays defended until eventually the shield in the center of the map will drop, and at that point, everyone should head to the center. Now, it's from here where you keep killing ads, you keep killing Angelics, and you'll also start tethering as a team to get enlightened. Now, warning, you also have supplicants which are going to be spawning in, which will explode and kill you. Now, after doing this for a bit, the encounter will eventually end, thus giving you your reward. Now, this takes us to the challenge of this encounter. Again, this is for double loot, so double the drops here. The goal for this one is for everyone to tether at the same time. Essentially, everyone must become enlightened, and they must do it at the same time. This may sound difficult, but let me just say, guys, once you get the coordination down, it's really easy. So we're going to start from the top. We would actually have 2 people stay at the starting relay, that being home base. Then we would have 2 people head to first base, and then the other 2 people would actually stay solo, defending both second base and third base. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to start the encounter off getting the enlightened buff. You could literally head to your locations immediately. The 2 solo players that are defending their areas simply just need to be gamers, have your best ad clearing stuff on, and keep in mind, one of the players from home plate and one of the players from first base can literally cycle to help with those solo players at those various locations. For instance, home plate guy will literally just go to third base. First plate guy will literally just go to second base through the portal. And so if there's ever a moment where your teammates are struggling with clearing ads, folks at either first base or home plate can literally flex to second and third. Now, to make things easier, if you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see text prompts that pop up. One saying undergrowth defenses deployed, the other saying undergrowth defenses subsided. Essentially what you want to do here, guys, is when you see deployed pop up on your screen, that's your ad clear moment. Go ham, kill everything, pop the shields, yada yada. Then when you see undergrowth defenses subsided, that's when you want everyone to get to the relays and now tether to refresh that inline buff. So for us, it would be 2 people at home plate, 2 people at first base, and then the 2 solos would literally just pick a base to always refresh their buff. So whether that be second base or third base. Now, when you go to refresh, someone needs to do a countdown. Literally just say 3, 2, 1, shoot. When that countdown is done, you tether, you then refresh that inline buff, and now you're good to go again, guys. So again, for us, we start the encounter by just getting to our relay points. That being 2 people on home plate, 2 people on first base, and then a solo player at second and third. We clear out ads along the way. Upon clearing out the ads, we all get in position at each one of our relays. We all tether in a countdown at the same time. And then from that point on, as defenses are getting deployed, the flex player from home plate and first base could shift eye to second and third to help the solos, or if the solo players are confident enough and can handle it on their own, they can hang back. My only suggestion with all of this, guys, is as soon as you see that undergrowth defenses subsided, you really want to immediately refresh that inline buff, because the thing that will mess you up in this encounter is whenever you wait too long and it says undergrowth defenses deployed and an angelic will spawn. When that angelic spawns on any of these relays, it blocks that relay, which means it will mess up your challenge. Now, upon doing all of this successfully, you'll head to the middle, and the difference here with the middle is that you're going to continue killing angelics, continue killing ads, but what you want to make sure before anyone shoots this queue is that all of you are in a line, and perhaps even the same order every time, although that's not necessary. The reason why I bring this up is that if you're standing too close to each other or out of order, the tether may not hit you. And again, for this challenge, all of you need to be in line at the exact same time. And you're going to do each one of these areas to pass that inline buff and continue unlocking that center area until you complete this encounter. And there you go, guys. You now have double loot. Now, the rewards for the second encounter is the Arc Shotgun Prophet of Doom and the Void Auto Rifle Reckless Oracle, both of which are very good weapons. Prophet looks like it could potentially be the best PvP shotgun in the energy slots amongst the legendary, even surpassing that of Matador for me. Reckless Oracle also looks to be fantastic for both PvE and PvP, with options like Keep Away being present on it, Dynamic Sway, Kill Clip is also here. This is a very good 720 all on its own, guys. And we'll talk more about roles at the end of this. But this takes us to encounter number 3, the Consecrated Mine. This is for Ancient Gospel and Sacred Providence, and this is a pretty easy encounter. On top of that, challenge is also very easy. Now, it's going to be in the center area where encounter 3 takes place. To start this encounter, you'll see the box that you can shoot, and you'll essentially just need to tether to that middle relay pillar to begin. Now, from here, the boss, the Consecrated Mine, will spawn. Make sure you're not standing in the middle or you'll instantly get killed. But you're essentially going to be doing 2 different mechanics for this encounter, which means your team is going to split up into 2 teams of 3. One team is going to be dealing with the boss and shooting guides. The other team is essentially going to be playing Gambit. Yeah, you heard that right. Gambit. Let's start with the team, though, that's following the boss around. Now, each one of these lanes, the boss will actually go down. And essentially, when that boss goes down each one of these lanes, it's going to hawk 2 on the ground. You're going to have to step in there, pick up that thing, essentially the same juggling debuff from the first encounter. But for the person that picks up that voltaic overflow debuff, they will be able to see which eyes you need to shoot on the boss. Now, the correct eyes will glow red for them, and they simply just need to say inner or outer, that being the inner eyes or the outer eyes. And if you have trouble figuring out which one is which, literally just look at each one of the wings of this boss. And the eyes that are closest to him are the inner eyes, and the eyes on the outside of the wings are the outer eyes. Now, you can actually solo this. You could do this with a slug shotgun. Very, very easy. That means the person who's getting the debuff can pull out a slug and tap each one of these one after the other. But if you don't want to do that, you can easily have the person in the middle who's getting the debuff always shoot the top wing eye. The person on the left always shoot the left wing eye, and then the person on the right always shoot right. And that way, everyone has one eye to deal with, and there's no confusion on who has what. The person in the middle calls out inside or outside. You do that mechanic, and then you move on to the middle area where the boss comes back, and then the boss will pick yet another lane to go to, which is where you do the exact same mechanic, except this time, the person who got the debuff last time, they will still be on a cooldown, meaning they cannot pick up that spit again. So someone else will actually have to step up there, pick the debuff, make the call outs, that being inner or outer, rinse and repeat. For the most part here, guys, extremely simple. Just keep juggling that debuff, make sure the same person doesn't pick it up twice in a row, and you shouldn't wipe. Now for the Gambit team. If these guys are going fast enough, you'll actually get through this process extremely fast. All you need to do on this side is kill these Minotaurs, who drops 5 motes at a time, which you can then pick up, and you're gonna dunk it at the relay that you see glowing white. This will give you the Enlightened buff for 45 seconds, which can then be used to defend the relay from shielded Vex coming to sacrifice. And the goal here is to get 30 motes dunked, which will then overcharge that relay, causing the boss to come to it, which will begin the damage phase. Now the challenge for this is very simple. It's the same mechanics, except for Team Gambit players, you always need to deposit 10 motes. Always 10 here, guys. Very straightforward. Instead of you just killing 1 Minotaur and going for the dunk, always have a player kill 2 Minotaurs and collect all 10 motes. The main thing to make sure of with this challenge is someone cannot accidentally pick up one of the motes, as that will extend things and mess up the timing. But as soon as you have 10, you go, you deposit, and the next player will essentially just do the exact same thing. Kill the 2 Minotaurs, get the 10 motes, and then proceed to go and dunk. Now timing on this is pretty important because you don't want to send a 4th person to go pick up the debuff from the boss when it spits on the ground. The idea is to do this fast enough where you essentially just have 3 eye rotations, and then that's it. Everyone goes to damage phase. Now you get 2 indications when you know damage phase is about to begin. Number 1, the boss literally gravitates toward that relay. But number 2, you'll see it right there in the bottom left-hand corner. The consecrated mind is drawn to the overloaded relay. And again, that's where you're going to be doing damage. And if you're ever wondering where that relay is, it's literally the relay that your teammates are going to be at who have been dunking on it. Now, as far as how to one-phase this boss, there's a lot of different methods, guys. Whisper is a way you could do it. I will say just have people not throw. Like, that's the biggest factor. Currently, right now, Titans do a tremendous amount of damage. I'm talking chunky, fellas. Yeet Titans with Cures of the Falling Star is doing more damage than it should be doing. Surprisingly enough, if you wanted to one-phase this encounter, you could do that with a group of Titans and Cures of the Fallen Star. I actually like to rock Leviathan's Breath. I find that the eye of this boss is pretty big, so Levy Breath with the Exotic Catalyst is easy to get Archer's Tempo going, and it does pretty solid damage. But if everybody's rocking Yeet, you'll actually run through this boss very fast. Just make sure someone's debuffing the target, whether that's a GL with the artifact mod, or hell, even tractor cannon. My only suggestion during boss phase here is always continue to be walking forward. If you don't, a wall will actually pop up, blocking you from doing any more damage. So use whatever you want to use, but you might want to pick something that allows you to keep pushing forward. Whisper's kind of a weird one because if you're not moving enough and you're too scoped in, you might find yourself walled off. And if you got teammates that step in front of you too much, you might kill yourself if you're rocking rocket launchers and grenade launchers, which is why I like Leviathan's Breath. And if you can't hit your crits, guys, you can use Divinity, although for some reason our Divinity user yesterday was having too much trouble, and hell, I just found it easier just to land the crits on the eye itself. But again, Cures of the Fallen Star, Thunder Crash, it's doing more damage than it's supposed to be doing, and it's an instantaneous amount of damage, and it shreds. I highly recommend it, and I'll have a build down below, a dim link for what I was using. Now, once the boss is defeated, you can now head back through the middle, jump across the platforms, and claim the loot. And if you did challenge, you will now have double chests. This drops the Void Hand Cannon Ancient Gospel. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient Gospel is now void, as well as the Kinetic Pulse Rifle Sacred Providence. Now, after this encounter, you're gonna have a traversal section before getting to the boss. You'll have like this Vex mill that's rotating that you can just stand on, and literally as it's rotating up, just kind of just keep moving forward until you're resting on the top of it. Granted, if you have like a grapple build, you can easily navigate this. And then when you get to the top area, you're gonna have these pods that you have to shoot, which you could step on. An Eager Edge Sword really helps here, guys. Now let's talk the 4th and final encounter. This is by far the most annoying encounter, and it's by far the hardest challenge. Not saying you can't do it, but you may be in a situation when you're wondering, should I do this 10, 15 times in a row to get a red border Omniscient Eye? Personally, I might just do my 1 run of this raid per week, get my guaranteed red border drop, turn that in for Omniscient Eye, and then just farm the other encounters for the other weapons. Because it's not just Omniscient Eye that drops from this encounter, there's also armor, and a lot of it. Matter of fact, you can get double armor drops, even after doing challenge. Now, we're going to go over the mechanics to do this run anyways, but this is where we're going to be squaring off with the Sanctified Mind. The goal here is to bank 30 motes into each relay pillar. Essentially what we just did a second ago. Each time you bank moats, you will be given the inline buff, which will allow you to hit those immune enemies and continue defending the relay from them. Now there's two relays, a dark relay and a light relay. When enough moats are banked into each of these relays, you'll then need to tether the relay to the boss in order to start damage. The boss will actually show you which relay needs to be tethered first. If it's light, it's going to be that left side. If it's dark or this orange color, it's going to be that right side. But first, let's talk about how to collect moats in this encounter. To even begin collecting moats, you need to shoot at these red glowing spots on the boss. There's one on his leg and there's one on his arm. When you shoot and destroy one of these red spots, a portal will open up. The one on his leg, which is on the left side when facing him, will take you to the left side. When you kill enemies on that left side, it will give you those light moats. The one on his arm will take you to the right side, and those will give you the dark moats. And the way to really get through this encounter very efficiently is to actually have 3 teams of 2. One team will be rebuilding platforms, which are these little tethers right here that you'll be doing every time one of the portals is actually brought up. One of the platforms here will disappear. But the other 2 teams of 2 will simply be collecting moats. You'll start with the left side, you'll shoot the leg, you'll open up the portal. The first team of 2 will go through, they'll kill ads, they'll slay, they'll collect moats, and as soon as they're done with that, they will tell the other players inside that they can be pulled back. And in order to pull them back, you simply just need to shoot the leg again. Now, there is a cooldown before you can shoot those red spots again, but give it a second, guys, and you'll be able to shoot it. It'll instantly pull your teammates back. Now, it's when that second team of moat runners needs to now run through, kill the next wave of ads, and essentially just repeat that process of getting pulled back out. Now, when you get pulled out, you want to go over there and bank your moats at the associated relay. This will give you the inline buff to kill those shielded enemies. And throughout all of this, you're going to see Cyclops that are spawning on either side. Make sure you deal with those guys. So having like a sniper rifle or something with some range to deal with them makes this a lot easier. Now, upon successfully dunking 30 moats in each one of these relays, you're going to get a text at the bottom left hand of your screen. It'll say things like the tether is pulsing with dark energy, the tether is pulsing with light energy. That means you've successfully done each one of those relays, and now you can begin to do damage. Now, damage doesn't begin immediately. Instead, you're going to need to wait for an angelic to spawn there in the middle. You have to destroy that angelic because now you can correctly relay the appropriate tether to that middle area. So if it's light, you do that left side. If it's dark, you do that right side. This is honestly where you want to have like 3 or maybe even 4 people dedicated to doing this tether. And like 4 does make it a bit easier. I know some people say just do 3, but you definitely don't want to have more than 4. If you have more than 4, things get way too chaotic, which means the other 2 players or 3 players need to get the hell away from the tether side because that means it's going to accidentally tether to them. This was a very annoying day 1 raid, and it's simply because the tether mechanic, folks just could not deal with it. So again, whatever side that he pops up first, whether it be light or dark, do that tether first and then swap to the other side and do that next tether. And this will extend the damage phase, which will essentially allow you to get the 1 phase off if you've got enough DPS. And again, what I was using here, guys, is literally Edge Transit, Tears of the Fallen Star, Titan. Definitely bring your best damage weapons here though, guys. And I will say this boss is buggy. There are times where I was doing damage where it felt like it was hitting all immunes. There was also another time where he bugged out and we were able to still do damage to him way past his damage phase. For some reason, this is still one of the buggiest bosses in the game, but after successfully completing this encounter, you'll have a chance of getting either Omniscient Eye or a number of the armor pieces. Now let's talk challenge. Challenge for this thing is really hard, guys. It's just annoying mainly, but it's difficult. The challenge here is that once you've begun to bank moats, you have only 10 seconds to bank all 30 moats into the relay. And there are probably multiple ways to do this. We try to split it up between 4 members, all holding moats, but because there is a delay there in which you can bank the moats, by the time we got to the 4th team member to get the bank off, we would fail the challenge, which meant, for us at least, we needed to have 3 people all holding 10 moats. That way we can get the moats inside the relay before the time is out and not fail the challenge. Now, we did this very slow and methodical, so if you have a better way of doing this, by all means, go right ahead. But we essentially would open up the portals just like we would do before, and we would send 2 players in on each side. Now, these players are going to want to kill ads and collect moats, except they only want to collect about 8 to maybe 9. Do not get the full 10 here, guys. You'll understand why in just a moment. They then will call out that they've gotten their 8 or 9 moats. They'll get pulled back, and when that happens, the 1 player on either side will go into the portal. Now, this player will need to get the full 10 moats. Now, once that player has gotten the full 10 moats, they'll then call out to be pulled back. You'll shoot the red spots again. You'll pull that one player back from either side with 10 full motes. And now the two players that were holding 8 to 9 motes each will need to go back into the portal, get their kills, and pick up their motes to get the full 10. Now, the reason why we do it like this, guys, and again, I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. It just worked for us because we were just throwing left and right. The reason why is that it allows the two players that initially went in to refresh their timer. You see, you have a timer when you pick up those motes, that being voltaic motes, and you have to dunk before that timer runs out. However, if you have 10, you cannot pick up more motes, and there's not enough motes in there for the two players that go in initially to both get 10. Either one of you will have 10 and the other one won't. So that's why when we send in two players, those first two players don't get the full 10. That way, when they go in the second time, they can instantly get their 10 because they're already at 8 or 9, and then they can get pulled back, and then all three players on either side can now dunk back-to-back 10s, giving you that full 30 and initiating damage phase. We found this to be the easiest for us, but I will say, if you got a better solution, by all means, go right ahead. Now, there are ways in which you send one player in to begin with. They slay out. They actually will get their 10, but then leave the rest of the motes on the ground. And then the other two players will go in afterwards, and they will pick up the motes that were left behind by the first player that went in, and also kill the ads to get the rest of the motes to get the full 10-10 each. Now, the reason why we didn't do this is because, well, I don't know. There was just some difficulty, man. Everyone seemed to always be like short one mote, which would get the timing off for everyone else, which is why we opted for the other route of just sending 2 in on either side, not picking up the full 10, and just refreshing that timer. Does this prolong the boss phase? Yes, but this is how you get double drops. At the same time, does it also eliminate more platforms? Yes, it does. But I would say if you're doing challenge mode for this fourth and final encounter, have a competent team, which is why I'm saying, for the most part, I am not going to be farming this fourth encounter. I'm probably just going to get my Omniscient eye drops each week as red borders, the guaranteed red border that you can now go back to Hawthorne to and pick up after you've completed the raid, but it'll be those other 3 encounters that I myself will be farming. So guys, those are all of the Garden of Salvation encounters, their associated drops, and their challenges for double loots. We're going to talk about the roles now, though, of each one of these weapons. Again, this is not going to be incredibly in-depth, as I am going to be doing reviews for each of these, but I just wanted to do a brief overview of what you're going to be farming for. Now, before diving into each one of these roles, we need to talk about its origin traits. Photo Inhibition. This weapon deals bonus damage to combatant shields and targets with overshields. Breaking a combatant shield disorients them. Breaking an energy match shield also disorients nearby combatants. Kind of leans into the whole mechanic of the raid with this one. I don't really know what the radius is, though. We haven't checked it. We're going to be testing each one of these weapons out, but let's jump into the roles. Let's start with Zealot's Reward. First off, you've got some unique combinations on this rapid fire infusion. Everything from destabilizing rounds and reservoir bursts, subsistence and reservoir bursts. For DPS, you could do something like auto-loading holster and control burst together. I would say if you were ever a fan of No Composure, this is going to be a fantastic fusion rifle for you. And then for my PvP players, I'm looking at that under pressure kickstart roll, or you can actually do under pressure in the new perk Closing Time, which improves range and accuracy and handling as the magazine gets lower, which inside of PvP is pretty much at all times. Next, we have Accrued Redemption. Guys, this bow is the first bow in the game to get kinetic tremors. Now, you may be wondering, what does that mean? Well, at base, it takes 3 shots from the bow to proc kinetic tremors. However, 2 shots will proc kinetic tremors when enhanced. So definitely worth enhancing here. And you can do things like kinetic tremors, Archer's Tempo, to speed things up even faster. Outside of that, you do have some other roles which look intriguing, from Archer's Gambit to Successful Warm-Up, Archer's Tempo with Archer's Gambit. Explosive Head is also present here. Firefly is also present here. Some really juicy stuff. Our next weapon is Prophet of Doom. Again, I talked about this weapon being potentially the best energy shotgun in PvP, and that's because it's got the perfect combinations, from high base range to being a precision frame shotgun to having opening shots for that boost there in range and accuracy. And the fact that this can be enhanced, really it just comes down to whatever it is you want to use in that third column. You can rock Slime Waste, which just got a buff. You can do Threat Detector, both of which are going to be just fine with opening shots. Now, another question is going to come up cross. What about opening shot versus closing time? That's something we're going to have to test a bit more, guys. We don't really know the range bumps from closing time. Opening shot has always been tried and true, though, as it nets you a plus 30 bump there in range, which essentially allows you to use whatever barrel perk you want. You don't have to do rifle barrel. You could do things like Barrel Shroud, which boosts that handling, and then let Opening Shot carry the rest of that range, because you're already going to be at max, or at least close to it. Now for my PvE players, look, that Pugilist 1-2 punch roll is no joke. That is a fantastic roll. I love it on Perfect Paradox, and it's going to be pretty deadly here on Prophet of Doom. Now, there is another roll that's intriguing, that being Cascade Points and either Envious Arsenal or even Reconstruction. The reason why I bring this up is because damage phases for things like Oryx, whoever it is that's applying Tractor, having a good pellet shotgun is actually meta there. Outside of that, guys, you do have Volt Shot, which is always a nice perk to have. Next, we have Reckless Oracle. Fellas, if you're a fan of 720 round per minute auto rifles, you're gonna love this one. From combinations like Destabilizing Rounds and Repulsor Brace to One for All, Kill Clip, there's a lot to work with on this weapon. For my PvP players though, I'm actually gonna be looking at that Keep Away high range roll. With Keep Away procced, we're talking 61 range. It's a little less than 30 meters. Reckless Oracle is looking pretty good. Next, we have Ancient Gospel. Ancient Gospel has essentially the Kindle Orchid roll, that Rampage Kill Clip combination. It's a combo that made Kindle Orchid so popular. Now, outside of that, so you can do explosive payload with Rampage. You got Destabilizing Rounds in that third column, which you could put with a damage perk like Explosive. Lone Wolf is still a trait that I need to look at a bit more just to see how it plays out. I haven't spent enough time with it, but I would say out of all the weapons dropping from Garden of Salvation, this is probably the most coveted weapon. Next, we have Sacred Providence. This is a kinetic aggressive burst pulse rifle. And yes, it can roll with kinetic tremors. Matter of fact, it can roll kinetic tremors, rapid hits. Demolitionist is also present here. For my PvP players, you've got Head Seeker with rapid hits. This was one of the most popular 4-round burst pulse rifles back in the day. I think when it came to PvP, Blast Furnace pretty much edged it out. But with these rolls, I think Sacred Providence, especially with the enhanced versions of these traits, it has potential. Now, our final weapon is the one that drops from our boss encounter, that being Omniscient Eye. Listen, if you're looking for something to compete against Ikelos, you've got it right here. It's another solar rapid fire frame sniper. It can roll things like 4 times the charm, precision instruments. You also have that incandescent roll here. For PvP players, Opening Shot with Elemental Capacitor, especially if you're on Arc for that boost there in handling. The other side of things though is I want to rock Lone Wolf with Opening Shot. Again, Lone Wolf improves aim assist as well as ADS time and AE, and it increases those effects when there are no nearby allies. Dude, that double stacked with Opening Shots could be a deadly combination. So guys, those are your rolls for each one of these weapons. We're going to be doing reviews on every single one of them, so be looking out for that. If there's anything we miss, feel free to let us know in the comments below. But fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.